Just the professors that are over them.
I think the current wording is that it's the grade givers, so whoever's like actually recording the grades is the person who can record.
Okay, so on the subject of anonymity of the reportee, I guess, is there any way that, I mean, you have to log on, put in your EIT, they have your information, they can contact you if they have any further questions regarding the report, but with the actual student, if they have a hearing, you don't have to be present, because that would just, I feel like that would make things really awkward, and someone could possibly get really angry, I don't know.
Yeah, we were just discussing that the reportee should not be anonymous, or the reporter should not be anonymous. But you're asking about...
But in the case that they actually, the person feels it, they want to go to a hearing, should the person that's reporting necessarily have to be there? Because, I mean, it would be really awkward if you saw someone that's choosing to your name and you report them and you have to do this every day for the rest of the semester.
Yeah, I think whatever follow-up is done from the initial report, that should be present at the hearing, but I don't think we would advocate bringing two students in the same room together, one accusing the other, and yeah.
Okay.
Because your relationship by reporting something is with SJS, and once they decide to use your evidence against another student, they should be able to represent you, and you shouldn't be there, you know, unless you really want to be. Which,
okay, I just wanted to know. Thank you.
Stephen Hatton, Science Council. I've got two questions, and both of them you might want to short circuit and click around course. But the first is, how do you envision SJS being able to verify these claims without the support of faculty or administration? It seems very like if the burden of proof is going to be me saying I saw you cheat on an exam, they're obviously going to say no, I did not. How do you, if the faculty is either A, doesn't want to deal with it and probably won't take part in these hearings, or B, is unaware of it, how do you plan to resolve that? Or how do you think SJS would plan to resolve that?
Well, I want to address the first part of your question where it's like one student saying yes, the other student saying no. The way I kind of imagine this reporting system work is whoever cheated or was allegedly cheated, it receives notification that there's been a report filed. They won't know if it's from a student or a faculty member. So therefore, you know, they won't say, oh, there's a student saying that, so therefore I have more grounds, because they won't really know where it's coming from. But essentially, this also keeps a record of incidents that have been happening inside a classroom. So if there are 6 different reports coming from one classroom, and even if they aren't able to verify those claims, the SJS office can still address that faculty member and say, hey, we've gotten a lot of kind of shady reports coming from your classroom. Could you maybe address this? And then the problem of academic dishonesty would be alleviated that way.
Okay. Sorry. My second question.
That's 5 minutes. Is there a motion to extend?
Motion to extend.
Okay, second. Go ahead, Stephen.
Okay. And this, I guess this kind of ties into my second question, is these reports, I mean, you're talking about if there are multiple reports within the same classroom, they can approach the professor. I guess I was kind of under the impression that these reports would eventually lead to this flow chart that you guys have on the back, where it may lead to, I believe you're talking about an appeal process and having a hearing. I guess what would be the deciding factor about whether this is just something the professor needs to be addressed about versus, SJS moving forward and the equivalent of prosecuting a student for cheating, and how that all ties together, I guess.
Well, I think that like definitely SJS does this like on a daily basis. They record whenever a professor submits something. So I think they would eventually develop the right ways to weed out those false reporting systems or false reports, and as they get more experience, I think so.
And to add to that, like the point of the forms is kind of it's twofold. So like there is one where there's a form where you're just like, okay, they did this, SJS then investigates it, but it's also for the purpose of record keeping, so that, like Austin was saying, like if there becomes an environment that's like not necessarily conducive to academic integrity, then action could be taken that way as well. So it's kind of 2 purposes.
I'm Patrick White from the Communication Council. My one question for you guys was with the anonymity of your accusers. I believe it's true with SJS's non-academic policies that you have a right to face your accuser in the hearing in the case that you appeal the charge. So how do you guys plan to deal with that now that you're adding the academic policies?
And he's nodding yes, so it must be true.
These are state policy right now. You'd have to change the way.
You'd have to change SJS's policies to maintain the anonymity of the accuser.
Well, that's the thing about this. Like, this isn't necessarily like exactly what's going to happen. You know, like this is just kind of the idea. So if it is passed, then yeah, we would definitely have to work on that issue. But for right now, I don't know. I mean, yeah, we would definitely have to change what we're thinking.
And I guess to maintain consistency in the policy, maybe on this form, you know, a student needs to understand that they may be called to face this person if they, if this investigation goes through. So that might be another deterrent from somebody considering lying on one of these reports.
Okay, so
they have to face the person.
Okay, so that will be explicitly stated in legislation that, like, so the accuser won't ever truly remain anonymous. Yeah, correct.
Okay, Annette.
And that was Student Association of School of Information. So my question is a little bit of a nebulous one, but so far the scenario that I hear is you're sitting in a big lecture hall, you're taking an exam and you see, Fred across the room, with the answers on the bottom of his foot. That's fine, but what happens when you're in a group scenario and you're working with 5 other group members and then halfway through the semester you realize that you're in an environment not conducive to academic integrity, or you realize that one of your group members is cheating? My question, I guess, regards the turnaround time for, figuring out the violation, determining whether or not it is in fact a true violation, what exactly the sanction would be. If you're involved in a group project and your group member is cheating and you accuse them, does that mean that's going to come back to hurt you? And so, again, you might not necessarily have an exact answer for me, but I think that the wording should address the idea of group projects because that's a vast amount of our education here at UT. And again, just clarifying what you all mean by sanction, what's meant by turnaround time. That's something that I would appreciate seeing.
Well, the sanction and turnaround time would definitely be like up to SJS. Like we want to be able to say what's going to happen and how long it's going to take to happen. So that would be kind of an internal process issue. As far as the group projects,
yeah, if you're worried about it not getting resolved before the end of the semester, what SJS will do, they'll assign an incomplete to the student. And then I think for the course, and then they'll go back until after the investigation is done and then apply whatever, I guess, the sentence was.
And this is a way of reporting, and if you're working in a group where you feel like if I report to anyone, I might have a negative implication on because my grade is dependent on this project. But I think in that situation, it doesn't matter what reporting mechanism you use, you're probably not going to want to use it. So we're trying to create a mechanism that could be applied wider and much wider than the current one. And I can't think of anything better than a web version of doing this. I think it's very, it's on the most informal side of being formal. And if you're not going to report anyway, it doesn't matter what we create, you're not going to report. And in those situations, I guess it would just be up to the group members to, to collectively say we should stop doing this instead of going through a reporting process.
Right. And I support the idea in principle, but I would just want to make sure that pragmatically, if I were a student, my work would not be vastly interrupted. I wouldn't have to repeat a class or something like that, or have to deal with the process of an incomplete because a group member of mine was not adhering to academic honor system.
Well, also I feel like if that situation was to come up and you did report a group member, I don't think, or it wouldn't make sense to me that anybody would punish you. You know what I'm saying? Because you are saying...
But that's where I'm getting into turnaround time. Because if I find out halfway through the semester, and say I try to report it to my professor, and my professor is unreceptive, so therefore I go to the website to report, but my professor expects me to work with my group the entire time, and say that this doesn't happen until, SJS doesn't have a chance to tackle it until the end of the semester, then at that point it might, and the person who is accused is found guilty, then you have a scenario of, okay, well that undermines the entire group's work. Are they going to have to repeat the class, repeat the work? That's where my question comes in about turnaround time.
Well,
and also, the topic of anonymity, you know, it's one thing to face Fred across the classroom who I might see in the hallways, but if it's someone, like she was saying, that I'm going to be seeing throughout the semester repeatedly or every single day, again, like I said, it's the idea of group work, it's nebulous, it has a lot of issues, so I don't expect an exact answer, but it's just, again, something to bring to the forefront.
Okay, that's time. Is there a motion to extend? By how many minutes? Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. You and then Josh.
I'm Lorena Watson at large. Correct me if I'm wrong, so I'm guessing that this entire reporting system would go by the reportee giving a student his name or EID or something?
Sorry, which student?
The student reporting the dishonor.
Yeah, he would have to let SJS know his name and the IDs.
Okay, so what do you do about a student who is in a large lecture class who sees a repeat offender? What kind of process would that student have to go through?
So let me just clarify your question. So a student sitting in a large lecture hall sees another student cheat multiple times?
Right. So it's not just one time where, oh, maybe someone else reported, but they continue to see it happen.
Then I think they would specify that in the report. This is not the first time I've seen this student in the lecture.
But if they don't know them?
Well, then again, it's just bringing to the attention of SJS that there's a problem in this one classroom of the student cheating. I mean, obviously, you're not going to know 500 people's names in one lecture hall class.
And that's currently one of the problems with the Business Honors Program reporting, and they don't have a better solution for it yet, is what if you don't know that person? The Business Honors Program form asks for a description of that person, and you can always back that up with a meeting with SJS. They have pictures of everyone. You know, I don't know what SJS would do, but I'm pretty sure that it's better than not having a way to report. So hopefully that's something that we can collectively address.
Okay, Josh.
Okay, hi, Josh Shirley. I'm an at-large with Academic Enrichment. Just a question going back to not being anonymous. The purpose of this was to be created so that students have easier access to report students that are not acting with integrity. But actually, going around the professor system, how would that make students want to report cheaters more effectively if they have to potentially come in contact with, say, a freshman versus an upperclassman or a senior that's been pestering them about homework and the professor doesn't really care? And how would that make me as a freshman want to report this person that is not acting with academic integrity?
So you're being bullied?
No, not necessarily. Not necessarily being bullied, but you witness this cheating and then your professor just doesn't really care. But you know that you have to see this student if you reported them if SJS followed through with the case, and you don't want to do that. How would I as a freshman be represented safely?
Well, I think as someone brought up earlier that you would only have to come into contact with that person if it got to the point where it was the extreme. So in probably in most cases it wouldn't hit that far. So I feel like that would kind of be an exception.
And also we've mentioned the institutional rules and how it's somewhere in there it says the accuser has the right to face, the accused has the right to face the accuser, right? I mean, if that's the case, then how is Business Honors Program and the UT Law running their forms right now? They must have found a way. Or if they haven't and they're just not getting to the hearing stage, then maybe this is something that SJS can take our resolution and address as a whole with all of the reporting systems at school. What we're trying to do here is something that's centralized, and being centralized, it will, in some ways change the rules. So.
Okay, nursing.
Hi, Emily Cohen, UT Nursing Students Association. I just want to clarify, this is just an extra way to report. It's an optional resource for students, and we can't control what SJS does with our reports, right?
Yes.
All right, fine arts, and then you, Jess.
Junior Fine Arts. So yeah, a lot of the questions being asked seem like process questions that maybe don't belong here, but for SJS. So I just wanted to mention that it seems that this would dramatically increase the workload of SJS. There's 50,000 new students who can directly give complaints. I'm not saying that they are, of course, but I mean, it seems like they're going to have to at least hire new staff for this. Also, there's only 2 schools mentioned that have a system like this. What systems do other schools have in place, and may one of those be better for the University of Texas. I think somebody mentioned that